And Israel's Supreme Court has just frozen Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to dismiss Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar pending appeals. Amid political protests, Bar's removal is tied to a corruption investigation into Netanyahu's office. In Gaza, the UN's relief agency warns that ceasefire progress is being reversed as Israeli airstrikes kill at least 91 Palestinians. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz vows to increase pressure on Hamas, including implementing Trump's migration plan and seizing more Gazan land if hostages remain in captivity. The UN Security Council has called for diplomacy amid growing tensions. Meanwhile, 59 Israeli hostages, both dead and alive, are still being held by Hamas. Well, joining us to discuss both of these latest developments that we're getting from Israel and Gaza is Lev Aaron, who is a senior journalist joining us from Israel. Lev, thank you very much for being here. I first want to talk about the Supreme Court that has frozen Benjamin Netanyahu's decision and the cabinet's decision to get rid of Ronen Bar. How significant is this move from the Supreme Court, and how much does it challenge Netanyahu's authority in Israel?
First of all, thank you for having me. As far as Israelis are concerned, it is more dramatic what happened in the Supreme Court than what happens right now in Gaza, because it was crystal clear from the beginning that Netanyahu agreed for the first phase of the agreement and then to sign also the second one, only because he wanted to comply to Trump's policy. Otherwise, Netanyahu would never sign a political agreement with Hamas right now. It means the collapse of his government, and it means that he will not have the next tenure. He will go to opposition. This is what all pollsters say. So it is not a surprise that once Trump himself did not want the second phase, of course, let alone Netanyahu didn't want it. Now, if we look inside into Israel, maybe it is the first time in Israeli history that there is a non-zero chance that a prime minister will not comply to the Supreme Court, because this is what Netanyahu said yesterday. Netanyahu said, if the Supreme Court will not let me boot out the head of the Shin Bet, of the Secret Service, this time I will not be obedient to the Supreme Court. So we are facing a unique moment in Israeli history.
Yes, Lev, I want to look at the implications of that unique moment that you've just mentioned. We know, of course, opposition against the move that he announced previously and then was gratified with the cabinet vote. But in terms of the divide in Israel, can you inform our audience on quite how divided Israel is, not just on this situation, but also on the action in Gaza as well?
I think that most of the Israelis think that as far as morality is concerned, Hamas cannot stay in Gaza. In this sense, we don't really have among the Jewish majority a real conflict between left and right. But let's say the center left believes that having the hostages back is more important than defeating the Hamas. And we saw that once we wanted to have the hostages with our soldiers, it didn't work. And sometimes we killed our own soldiers. It was very tragic. So in this sense, we have a real feud in the Israeli society. As far as the Supreme Court is concerned, for half of Israelis, I hope more, if Supreme Court gave a verdict or froze a decision, this is something that the government has to comply. But according to those who voted for this government and will vote for it also in the next elections, it is a good time, it is a good moment and timing for Netanyahu to tell the Supreme Court, stop, I'm the Prime Minister and I will not obey this time. And for all of us Israelis, it is very tragic because we are a functioning democracy.
Yes, Lev Aaron, I want to look now at the hostages that are still being held by Hamas. Of course, this is the reason that Israel has resumed military activity in Gaza, like before the ceasefire. In terms of the equation that the Israeli government is looking at, do you think it's a case of if these hostages are returned, the fighting will stop, or is this now the march towards Trump's Riviera of the Middle East plan?
Let me be a bit more humble. I can tell you what the Israelis think and what the Israeli government thinks, but also we have the other side, which is the Hamas. Israel believes that if we start again a war against Hamas, Hamas will have no choice but to be more flexible. And the reason that Hamas became less flexible is because on one hand there was no war, so there was no leverage, yes? And on the other hand, he did not believe that Trump is very serious with the plan. So now that there is an American green light for Israel to do whatever it wants, and Europe is so much scared about Ukraine, they don't have the energy to delve into the Gazan problems. Israel believes that Hamas will be more flexible next week, next 2 weeks.
Lev, Aaron, just to bring an end to this discussion, we do of course have to look and acknowledge at the loss of life that is currently taking place in Gaza. Palestinians dying. We know hundreds of children have died in these attacks since the resumption of fighting. How do these two sides, Hamas and Israel, get closer towards a ceasefire that can help end the death and devastation that we're once again seeing in the Gaza Strip?
As far as Hamas is concerned, the only leverage that it has is the hostages. Otherwise, it would be like Lebanon, like Hezbollah, where Hezbollah did not have a single Israeli hostage. So Hamas, as far as they are concerned, they will not give all the hostages to Israel until they know that they will have some kind of a clout in the new Gazan government after the ceasefire. And this is something that Israel doesn't have the appetite to give. And also Trump at this stage does not want to give Hamas this candy.
Lev, Aaron, thank you very much, as always, for joining us. We will, of course, be across all of the updates coming from Gaza and also across the Middle East. And that is all we have time for, but we'll continue to bring you the rest from across the world very soon.